Ever looked at a map of Europe and noticed, oh wait, what's that little piece of Russia doing over there? Meet Kaliningrad, or more formally the Kaliningrad Oblast, a Russian exclave on the Baltic Sea, 600 kilometers away from mainland Russia and completely surrounded by Poland, Lithuania, and the sea. But what even is it? Why does Russia own it, and what's the story behind this tiny piece of land? Why does Kaliningrad even exist? To figure that out, we need to go back. So to begin with, this piece of land actually wasn't Russian up until about 80 years ago, and was originally founded in the 13th century as a result of the Baltic crusades. But wait, crusades? Didn't that happen in the Middle East? Well, these particular crusaders, known as the Teutonic Order, did indeed start out in the Middle East. Founded by German crusaders in the Outremer, or the Crusader kingdoms in the Holy Lands, they founded hospitals, nursing the injured, caring for the sick, and also killed a few infidels on the side. But, well, one can only subject locals for so long, and when they were eventually kicked out by the Muslims, they had to set their sights elsewhere. Eventually, they received a job opportunity in Germany, which was too good to refuse. The Polish are fighting against some pagan dudes, go help them or something, kill the infidels, you're into that stuff, aren't you? These pagans in question were the Prussians. No, not the chic, Protestant, pointy pickelhaber wearing people we associate them with today, but rather a pagan tribe which was situated around the Baltic Sea. Currently, they were having conflicts with the Christian Polish state, which had called for help to fight against these tribes. And who else was more fit for the job than the Teutonic Order? So on the decree of the Pope and granted by the Holy Roman Emperor, the Teutonic Order led a crusade against these people, with their main goal to convert these people to Christianity. But also... Hey, you know what would be pretty cool? If we could make our own little state right here.
A state? Oh, like the ones who made the Holy Lands, right?
Yeah, but right here.
Yeah, no.
Oops. Too late, this is now the Teutonic state, and look at that, we have immigrants! Yippee! Thus, in the territory taken from Old Prussian land, the Teutonic state was established, which soon saw an influx of German settlers come into the region. The Polish, of course, weren't too impressed with this, but regardless, the order continued its advance northwards. Eventually, they reached this little place, which the locals called Tvangsto. Oh, they're all dead now. Which the Germans called Königsberg, or literally the King's Mountain. And it's this settlement which would go on to becoming what we now know today as Kaliningrad. Hold on, it's German though? We'll get to that in a bit, don't worry. Anyways, the Teutonic state eventually completed its expansion and were kind of stuck, since there were no pagans to massacre, I mean converts, anymore. And so they had the bright idea of going to war with their neighbors instead, specifically with the now formed Poland-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Which actually turned out to be a rather dookie idea. As a result of a war lasting 13 years, creatively named the 13 Years' War, the Teutonic state started losing a lot of land, until they were finally left with this. But now as reparation, they had to pay homage to the Polish crown as a vassal. Until this guy in Germany decided that he didn't really like the Catholic Church anymore, and decided to make his own church. And so this led many people to reconsider the whole Crusader thing. Thus, they declared the Duchy of Prussia, the first Protestant state in all of Europe, but still vassal to the Polish crown though. Sometime later, Brandenburg, a German principality centered around the city of Berlin, was eyeing Prussia. Prussia at that time was struggling with its very own serious problem. The Duke could not get his wife pregnant. This meant that he could not get an heir, which was very bad. But to the Brandenburgs, they saw that Prussia had a lot of ethnic Germans, big cities, and strategic ports, which was very good. So the Brandenburgs went to Poland. Hello Poland, my cousin Prussia is having some problems. Can we put one of us on the throne? And Poland didn't really care, so that's what they did. This now meant that even though Prussia was still technically owned by the Polish, it was now ruled over by the Brandenburgs back in Berlin. But this would change in 1657 when the Brandenburgs went back to Poland. Hey Poland, could I just have Prussia? Poland, at the time, had their hands tied fighting the Swedes, and agreed to give Prussia's independence to Brandenburg in exchange for Brandenburg's money and support. Now part of a single state, the Brandenburgs and Prussians decided to have a rebrand, to name themselves just the Prussians. Yes, the pickelhaber-wearing military powerhouse that we all know and love. From this point forward, the history of Königsberg or Kaliningrad just follows the history of Germany. It gained importance as one of Germany's most prominent cultural centers, first in Prussia, then the newly formed German Empire. Nothing really much changed at this point, unless you want to count this point in World War I, where the Treaty of Versailles saw Germany lose a lot of land, turning the area around Königsberg, known as East Prussia, into a German exclave. The real changes happened in World War II, where that one Austrian painter gained power and led Germany into a war with Europe. And, well, you know how that went. In 1945, the USSR and the Red Army marched into East Prussia and Königsberg, laying siege to the city. This led many Germans to flee west from the city and leaving it in Russian control. And so, after Germany's defeat, East Prussia was given to the USSR to share it between itself and its puppet states. Хорошо, so we can give south part to Poland and Lithuania can take north part. Нет, I changed my mind. We give middle part to Russia and we will name it Kaliningrad after Soviet Revolution leader. Отлично. And thus Königsberg, now Kaliningrad, was incorporated into the Russian SSR. Why wasn't it all given to Lithuania? Well, perhaps the USSR did not trust the newly incorporated Lithuanian SSR to hold on to this strategic point of land. For one, this piece of land held an important part strategically as the water didn't freeze in the winter, allowing Russian ships to move around in the Baltic Sea in all seasons. This also made it the perfect place to set up Russia's Baltic fleet, giving the area a militaristic importance as well. Furthermore, after the acquisition of Kaliningrad by the Russians, many Germans were forcibly displaced and sent back to Germany, and the city was eventually repopulated with mainly Russians. It's perhaps for this reason that Lithuania declined the offer to incorporate it into their territory a few years later, as the people there simply weren't Lithuanian and could cause further demographic problems. And that finally leads us to 1991 with the fall of the Soviet Union. As Kaliningrad was administered by the Russian SSR, they ultimately broke apart from the Soviet Union as part of the Russian Federation, leaving us where we are today. Nowadays, this once bustling center of German culture is now overwhelmingly Russian, with an estimated 87.4% of its 500,000 inhabitants being ethnically Russian. And despite being apart from the mainland, Russia doesn't seem like it'll be letting go of it anytime soon due to its militaristic and strategic importance. So, will it ever become part of Poland, Lithuania, or go back to Germany? Probably not. Hello everybody! First of all, if you liked it, please give a like, subscribe, and please comment. Your comments mean a lot to me. And I just want to say thank you so much for all your support on my previous video. Somehow I got 1,000 for my first ever video. That's like crazy. Yeah, this one was a really ambitious video to make. I am recording this at 2 AM, so I probably should get off now. But once again, thank you so much. Please leave a like and comment, and I will hopefully see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.